Hello. So Hans Gruer started at the beginning of the 20th century. It was founded by someone called actually Hans Gruer, who opened a workshop for metal pressing, and he specialized in metal equipment for bathroom. And he recognized he had a good vision. He recognized very fast that shower were an affordable alternative to bathing, and he was very successful in that. And then he devoted himself to leading the shower business to today's company, and today they're the leader in shower equipment. So this is an introduction just for the company, and now if we go to our use case and the design thinking approach. So design thinking is an iterative and multidisciplinary method for innovation. It is customer centric, and the key point is empathy. It's at the beginning of the process. Then, of course, there is a whole process that will be discussed later by my coworkers. And at the heart of the empathy process, it's understanding the meaning of the product for the customer, and understanding here what a shower means for the user. And it here we started with a shower is a mean for having a really good hygiene, and the company tried to radically change the meaning of shower to experiencing pleasure with water. And this is actually what means design-driven innovation here in the case of Hans Gruer.
Okay, so few words about design thinking here. So first, when we speak about design, you may be confused, but it's not design, it's not the shape or geometry or even the use of the device, ergonomics, but we mean designing a total new experience, an ecosystem. So on the left, we have a simple device, a shower head, providing you with water. You can modify temperature, maybe the flow, that's it. Just a shower, an activity dedicated to hygiene, personal hygiene, and everybody has the same output. On the right, it's not just about having a shower, it's having a total personalized experience, a moment with yourself, a retreat, a ritual after a long day. So you have an automatic temperature control, adjustment of the light according to the time of the day, and then you are biorhythm. It's about lighting, colors, sound, feeling, also image. It's an ecosystem. It's also about nature. They call it rainfinity. It's yes, total Zen moment, a total experience. So now I let Jan explaining more deeply what is the design thinking approach.
Thank you. The design thinking approach brings together at first what is technologically feasible, then what is commercially viable, and thirdly, what is actually desirable from a human point of view. And if you think of companies, they often have like a core competencies in the first 2 points, but they may lack in the third competency in understanding really the problem. So if we think of this showering experience, of course, everybody and also the developer and the development team has its own and his or her own showering experience, but that's a very personally routine. And if he maybe complements this experience with other experiences from the movies, for example, for the introduction sequence, for example, from American Beauty and from Hitchcock's Psycho, that's maybe not a good basis for a product development. So the first phase of this design thinking approach is focusing on getting a deeper understanding in the problem itself. And within this inspirational phase, the product development teams is linking directly to the future customers. And Hans Gruer did that here in this case in doing online surveys, in asking people what are their needs and their expectations to their showering experience. And within these online surveys, they learned that there are different archetypes of showerers who have very different needs and expectations to these to their shower experience actually. And on this basis, after this initial inspirational phase, the team can go on into an ideation phase where they come up with ideas on approaching these problems. And these are not only the problems of the development team, but with this empathetic link created in the inspirational phase, they can actually solve the problems of the customers themselves. And Tobias will go on with the next steps.
Exactly. And after creating here, yeah, let's say some solutions, it's important in the design thinking process to realize these ideas really into prototypes and to test if created hypotheses are really working, to make really an approach of trial and error, to learn also from the errors, like really taking a shower from the new user experience they have created. Take really the shower, have to look, they really was looking at, fits the light really with the sense we was applying here to this new showering experience, and try really to learn from these errors. And yeah, and all this process is part of an iterative approach. They are really changing from something really rigid to an agile loop-like process, where you really try to, yeah, like Jan was saying, to understand what is really the needs or what are the problems, to then create solution and learn by the tests you are doing, by the prototypes, what you are doing wrong, and going then loop-like again to understand, okay, and to apply it again on your understanding. Exactly. And Christine will continue.
Yeah, thanks, Tobias. Having described what is design thinking, and the next part of the presentation, we'll see now whether IP fits as to IP design, whether it fits best when applying either the traditional project management cycle or maybe there's the agile project management cycle. As you can see here, the traditional project management follows a waterfall approach. That is, it is linear, where all the phases of this process occur in sequence, one after each other. Its concept depends on predictable tools and also on the experience of the project team. Each and every project follows the same life cycle and stages, as we can see. So you've got the requirement gathering, the system design, then you go with the implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So each phase follows the other, and there is no turning back. Mostly here, the entire project normally is planned upfront from the beginning, so the scope is quite rigid, and usually this type of project management is used for big projects. Now I leave it to Christine to discuss more the advantages and disadvantages.
Thank you. So looking at the advantages are firstly that there is a fixed time plan for the project. That means a well-defined start date and an end date. And that's obviously helpful in the Hans Grohe context, so that they can be ready for the results of a new project. They can budget, they can ready their marketing teams at a specific time. The next advantage, then the known resources and costs of the project. Who will be working on the RainTunes project, and how much should be budgeted for example, the app. The next advantage, traditional controlling can be applied. Now, looking at the disadvantages, firstly, modifications in the project are not intended, and there is no flexibility in the changing environment. This means that if something goes wrong, or even if there's something beneficial in the environment, it's very hard to adapt the further process or even go back to a previous stage in the process. So, for example, if we look in the current context, there are certain enabling technologies like 5G, which are now being implemented. If the project would have been based on Wi-Fi speeds, it might mean that there are limitations, and it's very difficult then to adapt and go forward to say, well, we can change immediately to try and take into account enabling technologies that would be beneficial to the process. Further disadvantages: part of the project cannot be aborted without termination of the full project. The next one, delays, but also accelerations of the schedule cannot be treated. Of course, we all know that delays and speeding up are part of life, so it makes it a very rigid project management method to be able to apply in the context of IP and design thinking. I'll now hand over to Nicholas, who will discuss Agile project management.
So the Agile project management is actually an adaptive iterative approach. It's actually coming from the software development industry, but it's applied now to many different industries, including SpaceX is using that for their rockets. It actually consists of an iteration of 3 steps. The first one is the understanding step, where again you're already in an empathy toward the final user, your customer. You adopt a cognitive walkthrough where you put yourself in the shoes of your user, and really this step is really to identify the problem that matters for the user, the end user. Then in the creation phase, you try to solve the problem, but really in a holistic manner. You put everybody around the table. It's really an interdisciplinary team that is working on that to create a solution. And in the learning phase, you produce a prototype, which is the first design, which might be not the perfect design, but at least it's a minimum viable product to be tested with lead users. And then you learn from this experience from lead users if there is something that is really answering to the needs of the users, or if there's still a problem. And then if you identify the right problem, you go back into the understanding phase, where you try to better understand the needs of the customer, then create again a new solution, try another prototype, and so on and so on. So at every iteration of this 3-step cycle, the product becomes better and better and most suited to the customer's needs. And Pierre will now present the disadvantages and advantages of this method.
Like most of the tools and processes, there are always pros and cons. For the Agile project, I would say it's very much the symmetry of what Christine proposed, in fact, presented for the waterfall. So if we look at one of the key disadvantages for the Agile project management is that it's not commonly accepted definition. And this is rather defined as an opposition to the traditional rigid planning, so a waterfall type or like stage gate model. If we move to the numerous advantages, because Agile work with a series of iterative steps, as Nicolas said, on each of these steps are validated at each level, we can easily split complex projects into smaller manageable subtasks, I would say. And then there are several consequences of this that provide some advantages to this method, is that it allows a high flexibility, especially in regards of project size. As I said, we could slice it easily. Then we can adapt different time structure on cost structures. Also, this flexibility drives also an advantage when it comes to, I would say, provides dynamic capabilities to adapt to possible changes of the environment, be it on kind of competitors' move or market needs. You can easily, I think Christine gave this example of the 5G, for example, that would come in the middle of the project. You can easily redefine the specification for your next module and adapt to this. Then it's also, coming from the software industry, where there is usually a high pressure. People work with fast and result-oriented action, and this drives a benefit here, which is in terms of efficiency when working in high pressure innovative environment. Also, I would say the creativity of employees is really solicited at each loop. So it's this at the end generate an overall higher creativity in the project. And last but not least, certainly, since we slice the project into different steps that are validated each time, people can readjust, and we get quick feedback, in fact, on each step. So that means that's really a way to reduce the risk in bad investment. You don't need to wait up till the end of the project, which might be 1, 2, 3 years, to find out that you made big mistake at the beginning.
So agile methods can also be applied to IP creation strategy and management, and that's where IP design comes into play. IP design is an agile method of protecting digital business models by means of digital patents. And just as design thinking, it puts the customer and their product experience in the center. It looks at what they really want and how digital transformation can help fulfilling those needs. Hans Grohe's RainTunes project focuses on the redefinition of showering away from personal hygiene and daily needs towards an experience and a ritual with different functions such as energy boosting or stress relief. And of course, the IP necessary here also goes beyond product patents, because experiences can be realized in many ways and can also be exclusified in different ways. And IP design just supports this development by enabling the company to test grounds in different directions, in iterative loops, to develop and review options. So on the graph on the left on the slide here, we see that IP design is a process consisting of 3 sequential stages. The informing section is about analyzing the customer and the environment. The customer needs are observed and understood and mirrored also against technology trends. In the anticipating phase, then IP strategies for possible future scenarios and also Hans Grohe's desired position within them are deducted from the first phase. In the generating phase, synthetic inventions and related IP is generated that can secure those future positions. And so, as you can see, IP accompanies all the 3 steps of the design of the IP design process. After the generating phase, the informing phase starts again then. The good thing here is that options that are not further pursued during the cycle stay documented and can also be revisited later. And it is even possible to develop undesired negative scenarios in course of the iterations, either intentionally or by accident, and use IP to block third parties from bringing them to the market. So looking at all of that, a traditional problem of IP generation, namely the agile revision, adoption, and modification are not longer a problem, but rather the core of this IP design approach.